Film Companion gets you your film fix. Hit the bell icon and subscribe to get notified every time we drop a new video.
She does the one for love takes, but I think sometimes she just she kept the camera rolling beyond the takes, and we got these silent moments that said a lot, and those were her one for love equivalents, in our
Yeah.
scenes.
Ishan has very funny. We must one day, Ishan, release those images. We have very interesting. Right in my room, in my bedroom in Malabar Hill, where I used when I live, when I come to Bombay, right there, and it those were the actually the real beautiful icebreakers and also great fun. So the three of us knew that we could go anywhere because we were just who we, I suppose, because we were who we were, that there was this atmosphere of safety and real abandon fun, real fun.
Meera, Ishan, Tanya, so lovely to have you on Film Companion. First of all, congratulations on A Suitable Boy. It's so visually sumptuous and so emotionally satisfying. Though I have to say, she ended up with a suitor that I was not rooting for, and and
Still not rooting for, even in the film version.
even in the film version. And I was hoping against hope that Man and Saida would somehow run away and live happily ever after. I don't know how that would have happened, but I just wanted it to happen.
That's the Dharma version of it.
And I also had erotic dreams with Maan and Lata. उन्होंने नहीं डालने दिया.
They were
I did.
they were shared lucid
Yeah,
dreams,
this could
Meera.
be very confusing.
You acted
I
on
said
them.
dreams are
They were
confusing.
not just dreams.
So there clearly
Woh
needs to
डाल दिया.
be there needs to be another, sort of a few episodes of all that could have happened and should have happened.
A director's cut, definitely.
Yes,
Or just
absolutely.
release the deleted scenes.
Yeah.
There are
There's a
very
version
few.
of it.
They're mostly shots, not scenes that have been deleted, because we achieved a lot on very
Yeah.
little time actually,
Yeah.
and not the best hugest budget of all time at all. So anyway, sorry I interrupted your question.
No. Meera, I want to ask you. Alfonso Cuarón said that filmmakers say that they will adapt to the small screen, and he said that's wrong. Small screens have to adapt to cinematic visions.
Exactly.
Now, this is the first time that you're making anything for television. How hard was it to find that middle ground between the small screen and your cinematic vision?
I am very much of the same view that I look at A Suitable Boy as long form cinema, and I relied on the television structure in the narrative, which both Andrew and Vikram have already given us so beautifully in the novel, because there's so many cliffhangers in easily there in this tome of a novel, and Andrew distilled that in the structure of what you see. So having done that, and of course working very carefully with that narrative structure myself in several ways that we can speak about, having done that, cinematically I made no concessions to the small screen, because um, it, because the way I work is emotionally and humanly going to the heart of the matter, but it also requires a kind of visual sweep and a layering of the different worlds of so many characters and so many class issues, and
Yeah.
and music for me was a enormous binding between these different worlds, and I also had the great luxury and the great necessity of my own team with whom I have made cinema for 25 more years, like Declan Quinn, who's the cinema, director of photography, and the rest, and Lydia Pilcher, who produced it, and Stephanie Carroll, who designed it, and Arjun Basin, who costumed it. We have been making movies together for 30 years now, or together, so we speak in a kind of shorthand, but also came to every scene with that visual palette, and looked for locations that we could enhance. For instance, if you look at it, it's so many things have a great depth of field. You see doors within doors within doors, corridors that lead into, or even in Barsat Mahal, even in the Ganges, the layering of the horizon was immense. You had several layers of action. That's cinema. That's not, the box where it's just the close up and the master shot. Never, in fact. So I would say that the team and and the actors were so game for that, because they are all cinema actors. Most of, I mean, in that sense, and they enjoy that. So we often in Saida's Haveli, you take Tabu, walking down one corridor, and then she would go up, and we would then go up in another place, see her rise, that unite that other Tasneem waiting. We looked for locations that gave us that visual sweep. So very much
You
for
know,
me, it is long form cinema, and that's why I was so especially proud, or happy I should say, that it was the closing night in Toronto, because they showed 6 hours on the big screen. And this Saturday, the American Film Institute is somehow tributing me, and they're doing the same thing, six
Oh,
hours on big
lovely.
screen.
All six?
Yeah, yeah, it's
how lovely.
extraordinary. All six, Rishan. And I won't, of course, I'll be in my little bloody screen, not being able to be there. But that's the pandemic. Kya kare? Yeah.
Listen, speaking of Arjun Bhasin, can I make a humble suggestion of a suitable boy clothing line? Because not that any of us have anywhere to go to, but those clothes are the most exquisite things that I've ever seen. And I was like, I want that. I want that. So
Yeah,
think about it.
because they were genuinely, all hand loomed, and also vintage,
Stunning.
also, old brocades, and not just the leads, but everyone,
Yeah.
the whole palette and the whole world was hand loom and brocade, and we also did it very, of course, correct to the time. So, my mother would tell Arjun, "Oh, Kanjivaram saris were not in Banaras, huh, at that time." And so he knew, of course, he knew it. But so he had a wonderful, and he has just such a wonderful eye, and we had a great, and we're in Lucknow, which is the center of karigari. So for
Yeah.
Saida Bai,
Yeah.
for Ishan, for Man, it was all handmade and beautifully done. But yes,
Yeah.
we'll talk about it.
Absolutely.
Suitable.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, Tanya,
Yeah.
you have done a web series before this, and then you end up at the center of this gigantic BBC series. And of course, there's 100 characters in it, but the truth is, if Lata doesn't work, it doesn't work. Um,
Yeah.
how did you disconnect from the pressure of that and just act?
I think that has a lot to do with Miravi and the team. Because for me, I always sort of set that standard and put that pressure on myself that, oh my God, people are expecting lot from me. Because my best friend, she loves the book. And she sort of like put it straight to me that if you don't do a good job, I think we are done. So I
Yeah.
had the pressure building on me from myself. But I think with Miravi, she put me at ease and she sort of brought me out of my shell, where she would be like, just be true to yourself. Just play with the character, play with the scene, and see what comes naturally to you. And that is how I think I found my process. And I think that is how I could relate to Lata and play her with the authenticity that she has in herself. And I think the entire team, because the cast was so on point, it never felt like I was playing a character. It never felt like I wasn't her. It just all sort of fit so well together that it was like every piece is just together. It joins perfectly. So there was that harmony always in the team and with Miravi's vision, obviously. So this is her. Thank you.
Oh.
Ishan, you and I have spoken when the series showed at Toronto, and when we talked, you said that you and Mira and Tabu did very extensive readings and lots of conversations about the psychology of these characters and why they behave the way they do. So, can you share a little bit about what those conversations were like? Like, how do you, through that, find who Man is and who Man is not?
So it began initially with the groundwork was just reading the scenes. And then eventually it sort of evolved into discussing the characters' motivations, and it so happened that usually we'd find ourselves the night before a scene, an important scene, just in Miradi's room, talking about the scene that we played the day before. Um, and oftentimes, I mean, I would just be privy to these conversations that Tabu and her would have about courtesans, and what the culture used to be like back then. They used to speak of Begum. Um, uh,
Begum
who was
Akhtar.
it, Miradi? Yeah, Begum Akhtar.
Begum
They would
Akhtar.
speak of
Yeah.
various references, and then eventually what happened was that it started evolving into a discussion about what it is that Saida is attracted to, what does she need, what is lacking in her life that Man fulfills, and similarly, what is it that Man really seeks out in her? What is it in his life that that makes him fascinated about this new world? She's this exquisite creature that he's never ever seen anything the likes of before. Um, so yeah, we would speak of these things, and then eventually uh, it became a conversation about how somewhere subconsciously Saida knows that this cannot sustain. She knows that, so she tries to build a wall between the two of them, and she does it in a way that the way it's written, at least the way it was written in the script, was she plays him, and she in a way, in a sense, wouldn't be wrong to say that she manipulates him. She sends him off to the village, and she basically leads him to believe that he needs to do this to woo her, but he knows that she is basically just kind of shoving him away to delay the troubles, and to because it will become a problem eventually in the
Yeah.
society that they live in, and she knows that. And for him, his infatuation and his love is extremely pure, and he doesn't see why it shouldn't be allowed to exist. So yeah, I mean, but I think what's beautiful is we found the moments, read between the lines there, that really defined these characters. As Man isn't so naive that he doesn't understand what's happening with him, but at the same
Yeah.
time he goes with it. He does have a soft corner for her, and he'll do what it takes. But also he has a very strong sense of self. He is the son of a minister. He does have an individual personality of his own. He is popular with the ladies as well, so he has all of those shades to him, but at the same time, he has such a soft corner for Saida that he goes along with it. So I think these are the things that we just discovered. Mira Di, I was speaking about this in an earlier interview. She does the one for love takes, but I think sometimes she kept the camera rolling beyond the takes, and we got these silent moments that said a lot, and those were her one for love equivalents. In our
Yeah.
scenes. So that was really lovely.
And and also, if I may say, even though Saida is skilled in the arts of love, which she does definitely sprinkle as a web over Man, and he is entranced and intertwined in it, what she doesn't expect is actually to fall in love with him, you know.
Right.
And I think that there is, even though she's playing him in the beginning and all of that, but he's a strong and very I would say intelligent but also sexual individual. She then falls in his thrall, and it's not so much of falling, but she's then enters his thrall, and begins to depend on him. And it's heady for her, and that's the unusual thing about this duet, is that she actually lets the light in a way that she's
Yeah.
never done since her romance with the Nawab, where she was 15,
Correct.
and she had Tasneem. So that's really the beauty and the depth for me, is that duet, that he falls for her, she plays him, and then she begins to she experiences love after a long time of simply practicing its profession, you know. And then she knows, she's too wise. Then she knows that कि तरंगे हमने अभी खत्म कर लिए हैं, that this phase must carry on. It's not going to
Yeah.
sustain. So it's a very beautiful dance of of human, like the need for love and seeking it and having the privilege of finding it and then losing it, the way Vikram has written these characters. Yeah.
Mira,
And who
you
better
came
than
in.
these two? And I should tell you, Anupama, that we had always an iPhone, and I would do these scenes with them, the two of them, right from the beginning, and we would just play the three of us. In fact, Ishan has very funny. We must one day, Ishan, release those images. We have very interesting, right in my room, in my bedroom in Malabar Hill, where I used when I live, when I come to Bombay, right there. And it those were the actually the real beautiful icebreakers, and also great fun. So the
Yeah.
three of us knew that we could go anywhere because we were just who we, I suppose, because we were who we were, that there was this atmosphere of safety and real abandon fun, real fun. So that's what was so great, about putting them together. It was
Yeah,
extraordinary
they
because I
look
just
so
had
lovely.
to work. Yeah.
Mira, you came into the series when Andrew Davis had already written 8 scripts for,
Hmm.
as for
8
eight
hours.
episodes, which you then distilled into 6. And, there's been considerable sort of debate about the fact that he wrote a series which you have described as The Crown in Brown, right? Did you have to struggle a lot to balance between keeping it authentic and also keeping it sort of interesting for Western viewers? How do you make it accessible for them and yet keep it authentic enough to us?
Yeah, of course. For me, that is the most important, and actually, that's also was deeply vital also to Vikram and to me making it. And so yes, there were some struggles. Well, firstly, there was the struggle of finance. I used to say Crown in Brown, but we have bloody, I don't know what the budget of the Crown is, but I know what we had, and it was a fraction. Okay, so it was a way of saying, as usual, that if we are to make something like this, we have to make it and in the same sweep and magnificence as this other series with the Goras crown, but on a fraction, but not let anyone see that struggle. So, because of that struggle, it had to be distilled to 6. But in the distillation to 6 hours, what I did, which was very careful work, is to actually bring back the politics into the story, very much fully there in the novel, but not so much there in the first 8 drafts, because I mean first 8 hours, because it was much more about a Pride and Prejudice type of vibe. Who will she marry, and who will it be, rather than the fact, like for me, Lata was India. Lata was the new India. As she found her way, the country also found its way in its first democratic election. So, um, so to bring back that interwoven quality of the politics and the personal was the first thing I wanted, and everyone blessed it. But it took time to do that correctly. The second thing for authenticity and that was a bit of a battle, was language, wanting it to return to Urdu, to Hindustani, to Avdi, to what the characters would actually have spoken. So Saida and Man is clear that he's a anglicized cat who doesn't really like know Urdu. He can speak Hindustani like we do, but
Yeah.
it's clear. His class and his training is clear. But hers is obviously someone who's steeped in the refinements of Urdu, in singing, ghazal, and all that. And yet, they were concerned that if she spoke only in Urdu, this central character, she would be distanced from the main sort of Western audience. So then I had to come up with an idea of how she might have learnt English, which was is quite realistic, which is basically as a sort of concubine in Maharaja's palaces. I mean, that's what she would have, a governess, whatever. We created a little situation, but so I could retain that mix. So that idea of bringing the language back was a big thing. for me, very important for me, because I just could not make the film that they would go to the village and he would say, "Oh, father, I have come." I just couldn't bear that. It has to be how we speak, you know. And fortunately, Vikram really supported me on this, because he said, "Thank you for translating it back," because obviously he had done such a beautiful work in the novel, but he was also translating into English what Saida might have said in Urdu, So that was the second thing. And the third thing that I had to, really preserve was my notion of music. The way the music is sort of the beautiful glue that links all these universes. Ishan's, I mean, Man and Saida, and Lata with her suitors, and the idea of Anushka Shankar's sitar was for me the embodiment of young Lata. That sense of something coming from an old place, but very modern, very spunky, very much about, um, who am I, and that's Anushka very much embodied that. And so, but this idea of, as they would call it, this, they would look at it, the rough cuts, and they would say, "वो गाना चलता था, अपना गजल चलता था, वो ईशान आता था," whatever it was. They would say, "But Mira, these are these sort of musical interludes? Why couldn't they? She start to sing, and then we go off into other vistas." And I would say, this is what she does. And the music is not just music. It's comments on the drama in her heart and in his heart and in the action in general. To preserve my sensibility, which is actually much more desi than they would know, it was very important to me. It was the reason I made the film so much, the draw of the music. So I had to walk that tightrope. And then they came around, because I said, I'll make you all look good, I'll make Andrew look so good, because he'll be more on the pulse of the time. But there was this much and no more, like, meaning they had a sort of ratio, you couldn't go beyond. So yeah, but I think we achieved a truth because of it. But if we had more time, and therefore more money, there's more time, then there would be just longer interludes, I suppose. But people apne ghar mein in India and all, people are used to lugubrious pace. And this is an
Yeah.
economy and a kind of rigor, which I stand by. I completely agree. But it's just that, there's such richness in our characters that you almost want to be with them longer. But I think better less more, and that leave you wanting more, rather than going out for a pan in the middle.
Well, I certainly wanted more.
I
So
know.
I'm hoping there will be part two, and we'll get to see whether Lata and Man lived happily ever after. I hope you guys did. Thank you
Yeah,
so
well,
much.
yeah, thank you.
Fine.
They'll
No,
come back in
Mira, finish
Suitable
what
Girl.
you were saying.
Nah, kuch nahi. I said they are
Kuch
in
nahi?
Suitable Girl, which is coming, both of them.
Excellent.
I mean, I'm not in.
Excellent.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you,
Anupama.
guys.